Hello, and welcome back to more Films Under Constant Critique, where we take a look at films, some good, some bad, and some downright awful. I am Bongo Baikov, joined by our host, Maverick Drenzaria. This week we're taking a look at the film Max Headroom, 20 minutes into the future. This is a weird movie.
Before we start, can I ask you something?
Yeah?
Why didn't you just ask to do a podcast on Blade Runner?
Because if I wanted to, then we would have watched Super Mario Brothers.
Oh, it's funny you mentioned that, actually, because the directors of this movie did the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Wait, are you serious?
I am dead serious.
Suddenly things make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, once I read that, I was like,
Huh.
yeah, this definitely makes a lot more sense.
So, I guess a little bit of background on what this film is.
Matt Frewer.
Yeah, Matt Frewer. Frewer.
Mein Führer, I can walk.
Was kind of looking for a character that would basically introduce music videos on like a I don't know what it's called, but it was basically the British version of MTV. And so he had to create a host for this show, and so he decided he was going to make the most boring, bland protagonist he probably could, and so he made him a literal talking head, just this white guy in a suit. And then he just decided to tack on for fun. This character is completely computer generated, even though in real life he wasn't. It was actually Matt wearing makeup.
Makeup, and
But
also the background was computer generated.
yeah. And so then that kind of created this character of Max Headroom, who's a super kind of glitchy TV personality. I don't really know how else to describe him.
And he did product endorsements. I know he did like Coke.
Yeah. Yeah, he was big for New Coke, specifically.
New Coke, yeah. You remember New Coke? I think, what was the slogan? It was like "Catch the Wave" or something.
Yeah, it was Catch the Wave. Because I watched a whole bunch of those adverts after I had watched this movie.
Actually, yeah, that was something I did when after I watched this TV movie, is I was like watching like Max Headroom clips, including some of the commercials, because I'll be honest, I wasn't like, I had like a vague idea of who he was. Basically, like, I'd seen a few clips, but I didn't really know like any of the history or background behind him or anything. So this movie definitely caught me off guard. It was not what I was expecting.
No, not really.
Because this is like the most random thing we've chosen to do a podcast on.
It really is. There's like no connections to anything else. And I believe this is our first movie that's not part of like a series of
movies. Is it our first standalone movie?
I think it is our first standalone movie. Unless you count all the times that we talked about Masters of the Universe.
Or Spiral.
So this movie was basically created to be a backstory for the Max Headroom television host.
Yeah, because this is before the show.
Yeah, this was premiered before the show, and then the movie was basically, I think it was reshot, like, scene by scene, and then they cut it down to make the first episode of the TV show.
Pilot episode of the show? Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah. They cut out a lot of stuff, apparently, like, around the middle point, so that it did focus more around Max Headroom. But for the most part, it's just the exact same setup and the exact same plot between the two.
Yeah. And my knowledge of, like, Max Headroom, basically, I knew he was, like, the concept was he was the first computer-generated talk show host.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't actually, but, that was the whole concept. Because the first time I heard about Max Headroom was the Doctor Who hijack
Hmm.
that happened.
I think that's the first time I heard of Max Headroom too. See, I think I saw like a video online that said that like covered the incident, and I was like, okay, who's Max Headroom?
Because I think that was how I first heard about that. And a little
So
trivia
another,
about the hijacking, real quick. Apparently, the that ended up influencing the scene in the first Batman movie, where the
really,
Joker hijacks the TV station and runs his commercial for his
huh?
products.
That's actually kind of cool.
And
So
also,
I
Back
think,
to the Future Part 2, that included a parody of Max Headroom in the
oh
Cafe
yeah,
80s
it did.
scene.
Yeah, because they had the celebrities that you could pick from
Yeah,
to
Michael
like order from.
Jackson,
Ronald
Ronald
Reagan.
Reagan, the Ayatollah, I think was in there as well.
Yeah.
All I want is a Pepsi. But yeah, so I had zero idea what to expect from this going in, which I think actually was a good way to like approach this,
Yeah.
because then I would be more surprised by
What it turned out to
what it turned
be.
out to be. Because okay, I'll be honest, what I was expecting this to be like was something like sort of like Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Gloom Beam, where it's just some bizarre, random, forgotten acid trip that was made in the 80s.
Nope, we get another Blade Runner knockoff by the same people that did Super Mario Brothers. Speaking of, by the way, you mentioned that you went into this completely blind. The first time I saw the Super Mario Brothers movie, I went into that completely blind. I was like 13, 14,
I cannot
somewhere around
imagine
there.
what. Well, I did show it to one of my friends, and he went into it pretty blind, if I remember right, which I thought was really funny because he's familiar with like the games and stuff. So like
Yeah.
it was not at all what he was expecting.
Because
Whereas with
both of
me,
those.
I knew like about some of the weirder stuff because you. I remember one time you just told me like basically the entire plot of the Super Mario Brothers movie.
And it's just an acid trip. It's just not what you'd think from a Mario movie.
We're not gonna get into that though.
No.
But I was expecting, like I mentioned Doctor Owl and the Real Gloom Beam. I also noticed, like on Wikipedia, the genre it was listed under was cyberpunk.
Yeah.
So I was like thinking there would be dystopian elements, which there is that. Or I was just expecting some weird pseudo documentary like that TV movie that Bruce Willis did to tie into
Yeah.
his album. I think it was The Return of Bruno or something. And it wasn't what I expected exactly, so there's that.
I knew some of the plot points from this movie, and from what I heard, I thought it was going to be some sort of weird, kind of not really political, but I thought it was going to follow the investigation and then the birth of Max Headroom. I was not expecting this weird dystopian like hellscape movie that we got.
Okay, so
So
this movie was
I
released in 1985. And I mentioned the directors of this directed the Super Mario Brothers movie. Annabelle Jankel and Rocky Morton.
yep.
So that means they only did like 2 movies together. And this was one of them.
Super Mario Brothers was the other. That is a great resume right there.
Yeah, they although before that they did music videos,
Mhm.
a lot of which combined animation and computer graphics. They did I think an Elvis Costello music video
Huh.
and the Tom Tom Club, a few 80s music videos. And then they did this. So this is the first TV movie we've done.
And it's also the shortest movie that we've done. It's only 57 minutes long.
57 minutes. Let's see if this podcast is longer or shorter than that.
I mean, we're basically a sixth of the way there already.
Yeah. This is also the first movie we've done where I did not recognize most of the cast.
Yeah, the only person that I really knew about was Matt Frewer, and that's just because he played Max Headroom.
He was the only familiar name. I looked through the cast, and it seemed like most of them just did British television, so that's probably why.
Yeah. So something interesting. One of the two people that are credited for creating the music for this movie is Midge Ure. Now, Midge Ure actually did a cover of David Bowie's "The Man Who Sold the World," and that version was used as one of the main songs for Metal Gear Solid 5.
Midge who?
Midge Ure. It's spelled U-R-E. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that.
I guess we'll try to summarize the plot. Unless you want to give your initial thoughts on it.
We'll wait on those. I say we go into the plot. So the film starts.
Good luck
by
with reciting the plot of this thing, by the way.
So the movie starts focusing on the character of Edison Carter, who is also played by Matt Frewer, who's he's like an investigative TV reporter who starts off by investigating a home explosion, but then he begins to investigate Network 23, this TV station that supposedly has a lot of shady dealings going on.
I should ask, though, before we... Is the title literal? Does it take place 20 minutes into the future?
So the reason why it was named 20 Minutes into the Future is for a similar reason that 1984 was named 1984. Because they wanted to make it seem like these events were right around the corner. Like these could potentially happen.
I'd rather be doing 1984 than this, but anyway. Any version, really. Because I was confused what year this took place in. Because I guess 20 minutes into 1985, I don't know.
20 minutes to April 4th, 1985, of course.
What would have been funny is if, the title was literal and the first episode of this was aired 20 minutes later.
That would be pretty funny, actually. Yeah, Carter begins to investigate Network 23, this kind of super shady television network. And what I love is the fact that Carter works for Network 23. So, everyone that's higher up just watches him do this. And they're, kind of concerned, but not really. They're just eh.
Oh, crazy Edison Carter is doing his regular thing, trying to rebel against us. Is it just me, or did Edison kind of look like Kyle Reese a little bit?
He does a little bit, yeah. It also helps that the setting is just this run-down hellhole.
It does kind of look like the future, the Skynet future in one of the Terminator movies.
Yeah. So Network 23 ends up creating a new form of advertising that they call blipverts, which are split-second ads. But if you're I think it's if you're a couch potato or you're obese or something and you watch one, you explode.
Wait, Nick.
Yeah.
TV having effects on the viewers. Where have we seen this before?
I don't want to think about that one.
Well, okay, it's a little bit like Batman Forever, but also
I know
Halloween 3.
That's...
Halloween 3.
Oh, you're right. I forgot Halloween 3 was a movie.
To be fair, most people do. Yeah, so they're called blipverts. And I'll be honest, I was kind of lost during some of the beginning of this because they were saying a bunch of words that I wasn't familiar with.
Yeah, they kind of just jump in to the world. It's like you're just kind of looking at it at a random moment in time.
Yeah.
And so the executives at Network 23 end up talking to Bryce Lynch. He's like this teenager that knows computers, and so he's like making a cyber parrot for some reason.
I forgot
Uh,
about that. Yeah, the parrot. It's like this computer generated Scarlet Macaw.
yeah. And so the executives are trying to get him to basically take care of Max. So then he goes and hires basically two. I don't even know what to call them. Hitmen?
Yeah.
Thugs? I think I'll just call them hitmen for now. The hitmen are super bizarre because they're almost treated like the main characters of the movie. Because I feel like they honestly might get more screen time than Max Headroom does.
A lot of characters in this do, actually, I noticed.
Yeah, for a movie called Max Headroom doesn't appear a whole lot.
I was surprised about that, but we'll get to that. One thing I found funny is that, like, you can tell this was like a satire of like corporations from the
Yeah,
80s and how they just don't care that their products are like killing people. They're worried about sales instead.
yeah.
Yep, very subtle, guys.
How do you convince your network to publish a movie about how network?
Also, Matt Frewer in this, even when he's not playing Max Headroom, when he's playing Edison, he still seems robotic.
He does.
Yeah, he's figured out the Blipverts are dangerous. They're hurting people.
Yeah.
Basically, there's like
So
one scene where a guy like blows up,
yeah, that's a fun
kind of
scene.
like
It's
Mr.
just a dude
Creosote in My
exploding.
Python's The Meaning of Life. Also, the visuals of this they kept reminding me of the Mr. Roboto music video.
It's been a while since I've seen that music video.
Well, dystopian future. I mean, you can
Yeah.
imagine.
I mean, the whole time I was watching it, I honestly was thinking about how this looks like the Super Mario Brothers movie when they're outside of the city.
Anyway, there's like
So
there's this. Okay, so the hitman, they're chasing him. He gets in an elevator, which the whole time you could tell he's not in an actual elevator.
yeah.
Like this is where the low budget started showing around here. I was like, just the whole time I was like, there is no way he's in a real elevator. And also the two hitmen, they're just wandering around the building trying to
Yeah,
find him,
and
basically.
from what we see of the hitmen, they don't really care. Because, like, the first scene that we see them in, they're just kind of chilling out in their car going, yeah, I guess we've been hired.
I guess,
Okay.
yeah. They called the 1-800 henchman hotline, I guess.
And so while running around the network and trying to escape, Edison ends up, I forget exactly how it happens, but he ends up getting his head stricken by a sign that says Max Headroom 2.3 meters.
He's on a motorcycle. He gets in a
That's
motorcycle, and they're in like a chase, which made me think of THX 1138 because there's like a motorcycle chase in that. I feel like this whole thing is just us like, oh, it's like that one part from some other dystopian thing,
I mean, it really is. It's
what
just
have we
like
mentioned so far? We mentioned 1984. We mentioned Blade Runner.
we mentioned Super Mario Brothers.
THX 1138. Like,
it really is just kind of they boiled down dystopian fiction into its bare elements, and this was the result.
I guess, yeah. But okay, they have a ramp set up, like they control a ramp, and that results in him crashing. Which, okay, couldn't they have come up with a more efficient way of killing him than this?
I mean, I remember they were in a car. They could have hit him in the car. I feel like that would have been easier than setting up some ramp in the hopes that he decides, yeah, I'll go for it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how did they know he was just gonna be on that ramp just at that exact moment? That doesn't make sense.
So he hits his head on a sign that says Max Headroom on it and is knocked basically into a coma. And so the nerdy guy, Bryce Lynch, ends up collecting his body and then scans his brain into his computer that he's been testing using the parrot to create a computerized version of Edison Carter.
Which, you know what this reminded me of?
What?
RoboCop.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Got another one.
And there's a RoboCop poster right next to me too. So there we go. There's another case. Also, there's another case of, computers can do anything.
It really is. It's like, oh, this computer can scan his brain, and then we'll just rebuild Edison Carter's entire personality and memories. It's fine.
Of course.
Computers can make people explode. It's fine.
Computers can control weather satellites and cause bad weather in Colombia. Like in Superman 3. Oh, got another one in.
Is Superman 3 a dystopian fiction?
Back then it was. Also, another thing I was noticing is the guy playing Mr. Grossman was horrendously overacting in this.
Yeah.
Just there was like one line delivery where he like said "get off that screen" or something, and it was just the delivery of it.
Everyone in this movie, they're either a plank of wood or they're just bizarre.
Like, all the acting in this was actually pretty bad, to be honest.
Yeah. So they end up digitizing Edison into the computer with the hopes that they'll be able to make it seem like he's still alive. So they'll have just the digitized version of Edison Carter hosting his normal show. But they end up finding out that the program is something's wrong. And so the computer-generated Edison just keeps saying the words Max Headroom over and over and over again.
And that ends up becoming
with no other options. Yep. And with no other options, Bryce has the hitmen dispose of Carter's body and get rid of the virtual version of him.
The end. Roll credits. No, I'm kidding. Imagine if it had just ended there.
And so, how the hitmen take care of both is just great. They end up selling the digitized version of Edison to like a pirate TV station, and then end up selling Edison's body to a body bank.
I don't remember this.
You don't remember the body bank?
Oh gosh, I'll admit there was a point around like maybe there's a halfway mark I might have zoned out a little bit, but.
So they end up taking him to a body bank. I think it's like a place where they harvest your organs after you die. Maybe. They're not really clear with this movie.
The world
what's
building
happening.
in this is really bad. It's like just, you don't know like why anything is like anything in this.
So Edison's just kind of remaining unconscious this whole time in the body bank, but his digitized form is now being broadcast over this pirate television station, where he becomes known as Max Headroom.
We finally get the appearance of Max Headroom, and it was
he just kind of
42 minutes into this thing, by the
way. Yeah, it's well into the movie when he finally shows up.
That's like almost like 3/4 of the way through it.
Yeah. And we don't really get to see much except for Max telling a few jokes.
Which, this was actually for me, this was the most entertaining part of it, was when Max Headroom finally showed up.
Yeah, I feel like they should have focused more on Max. Like after Edison, died or went into a coma, I think they should have just gotten rid of him and then just had Max be the focus of the rest of the
Because
movie.
then it just ends up focusing on these weird mutant freaks of the apocalypse for most
Yeah.
of it. They'll look like something out of like Mad Max or the Road Warrior. Oh, there we go. Got some other ones in.
Yep, there we go. So then it turns out that
That's what the
Edison,
costume design seems like in some of this is like some
it
Mad
does, like
Max ripoff.
especially when it's the people that are just out on like the outskirts of some random destroyed city. They look like Mad Max
There's
extras.
like one guy that has like a mohawk and like there's a
Yeah.
bunch of people wearing like leather and stuff. Yeah, okay, Max Headroom finally shows up.
And he tells a few.
And I will give this is one thing, I'll give the makeup artists a lot of credit,
Yeah, especially for their work on Max Headroom.
for Max Headroom because he actually does look like he's computer generated.
Yeah, he does. And the editing definitely helps with that, how it's kind of like jerky.
And the editing too, yeah, with like how they make his voice like really glitchy and stuff.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of jokes that I thought were funny that he said. I wrote a few down. One of them was, as they say when you're buying suppositories, with friends like those, who needs enemas?
That one's pretty good.
I understand why people prefer watching television to the radio. They worked out how boring it is watching the radio. Yeah, so basically Max Headroom becomes like really popular on TV now.
Which then causes Network 23's ratings to plummet because everybody's tuning in to see Max Headroom.
Yeah, who wants to watch all that boring Network 23 stuff?
and and so now Bryce and I think the guy that's at the head of Network 23, who I think is also his father, end up having to go down and trying to pursue Max Headroom and trying to find out why this program came back that they thought they destroyed.
Because that would be a weird thing to just have it like who like just out of nowhere like who is this
Yeah.
guy?
At the same time, Edison wakes up and he ends up escaping the body bank before his organs are harvested. And the two hitmen are then also trying to hunt down Edison. Well, what ends up happening is Bryce, the network executive, and the two hitmen are all traveling in the same vehicle, and you actually get to see inside of their car, which is just like this freezer cabinet full of limbs of different people. This whole and then there was another. There was two additional like just henchmen of Network 23 that were in the back of the truck because eventually they get out to do something and the two hitmen kill the two henchmen, shove them in the car, and drive off without the executive or Bryce. And then I think their involvement with the story just stops.
That seemed to be happening quite a bit in this. Like there'd just be a character and then they would just disappear.
You remember how in Supergirl it was like, and then this happens, and then this happens,
And then we get a scene of
That's basically what this is.
kind of, yeah, I kind of gave up writing notes towards the end, honestly, because I was like, what is even happening? I don't. Oh my gosh.
So Edison eventually ends up making his way back to the television station and ends up broadcasting a newscast that shows the corruption inside Network 23 and that Blipverts are killing people.
Yeah.
And then that's the end of the movie.
So I guess that means Network 23 doesn't exist anymore.
I guess not.
I mean, that's a more optimistic ending than most dystopian
Yeah.
movies seem to have.
It's just a weird movie overall.
It was, yeah. Although honestly, I kind of was hoping it would be weirder.
See, I think there's one thing that they could have done that I think would have made this a lot better. I think I mentioned part of this earlier.
Focus more on Max Headroom for one thing.
Yeah, like after Edison gets his head injury, like shove him in a closet or something, or like put him away, and then focus on Max. I think Network 23 should have held on to Max and then make him become like super popular so basically everyone forgets about Edison. And basically just let Max Headroom keep on growing and growing further and further until eventually he starts to, make those jokes except about Network 23 and then he leads to their downfall instead of just focusing on Edison.
Like I said, I kind of zoned out of parts of this,
Yeah.
so there might have been a few things I missed, to be honest. Because there was just some point where the plot just lost me.
It goes so fast. It's like you get one plot point and then you're right on to the next thing.
I couldn't tell what was going on. I couldn't follow the characters. I don't even remember most of their names.
Do you remember I guess not do you remember, but do you know how in some movies you can tell when they cut out certain scenes that would be like probably very helpful to understanding the movie?
We had an example of this. Remember Superman 4?
Yes, yes. I feel like we need a 2-hour cut of this movie to make it make sense.
Cause yeah, really. Some of it was interesting as like kind of just because it's just this weird thing that just happened and was
Yeah.
shown on TV for some reason. Like I didn't have really too high of expectations, to be honest.
And its home media release was a bit weird too.
Was this
Because
released on DVD?
so it was released on VHS in the UK and the US, and then eventually it was released on DVD, but only in Japan.
Wait, it was only released on DVD in Japan?
Yeah,
Is that why there were those like Japanese or like characters at the beginning?
that
Like the
might be it. You might have been
letters?
watching a version
Because it
that
might
was
have been
made
from
for
they might have gotten it off a Japanese rip then, huh?
yeah, which strangely would probably be the most high quality rip that you could find.
Probably, yeah, unless there's like a laser disc.
I wish.
It'd be funny if there was a laser disc. I guess if you could find the first episode of Max Headroom, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah. It's the same thing edited down to like 30 minutes instead of 60.
It'd probably be better actually if it's edited down and it's shorter.
Yeah.
Because basically watching this, for me, most of it just felt like some really crappy, like low budget rip off of something like Blade Runner or one of the other movies we mentioned.
Yeah.
And then
It's
Max
overall
Headroom
just
has
kind of
like
this
a cameo in it.
It really is just this weird kind of standalone thing where like yeah, it is involved in one of the most, famous characters from the 1980s.
Yeah, because that's another thing is I forgot like while reading a bit about this, I hadn't realized how prominent Max Headroom was in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like how like famous of a character he was because he's kind of just occasionally you might get a reference to him here and there, but nowadays most
Yeah.
people kind of forgot about that.
I think the most recent reference to him was actually in Pixels.
Yeah, I read about that. Yeah, he was in Pixels. Gosh.
Funnily enough, that's probably one of the best uses of Max Headroom I've ever seen. Because he's basically the guy that tells the heroes, hey, we want to fight you. He's basically the guy that's like talking for the aliens, which I kind of love.
I have forgotten as much as I can about that movie.
I actually haven't seen all of Pixels. I've only seen clips.
You just looked up the Max Headroom clip for this, basically.
Exactly.
That's like the only clip of him that's actually CGI.
Yeah.
But with this movie, I felt I got more out of reading about Max Headroom himself
Than you did about watching the movie.
because he's hardly in it, for one thing. And again, most of it is just a ripoff of, you know,
Other dystopian movies.
yeah, any dystopia, yeah. So it was kind of interesting, but I probably wouldn't watch it again. I don't think
Yeah.
it's far from the worst thing we've done on this podcast, though. It's just it was kind of just
It's very much a TV movie.
yeah, and that's another thing. It's a TV movie. It's low budget. They didn't have the same production values. And yet it's probably still better than Batman Forever.
You're right there. I would rather watch this than Batman Forever. Mostly because my suffering is ended much more quickly with this movie.
Although, speaking of Batman Forever, I noticed while watching this and like other clips with Max Headroom how similar some of his like his voice and some of his demeanor was to Jim Carrey.
Yeah, actually there was some commercials that came out in like the late 2000s when a British television station was like changing over to digital, which featured like an elderly Max Headroom as like the character in these commercials, and he actually complained that Jim Carrey stole his whole thing.
And that's another thing. I rewatched The Mask recently, and I was like watching it, and just the similarities. I can definitely see it.
Yeah, they do feel very similar.
But yeah, I can't say the movie. It wasn't a total waste of time.
It's an interesting artifact, I would say.
It was short at least.
Yeah.
So that already gives it better rewatch value than Prometheus and Alien Covenant.
And again, if you watch this one, you're done with it a lot more quickly than you are with Prometheus or Covenant.
Yeah. It's just the story to me. The story of it just wasn't engaging to me.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, again, it was mostly just me like going like, oh, it's this part's a ripoff of this part's a ripoff of this. Like... Anyway, I could get to some trivia if you want.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned, this was remade almost scene for scene as the first episode of the show Max Headroom. And only 3 of the cast members from this movie appeared in it: Frewer, Pays, and Shepard.
That is a very interesting choice. Like, why not just reuse footage from the movie you already shot?
Yeah. I would think like they would do something sort of like there was that episode of Star Trek, the Menagerie, which reused they like had flashbacks to the pilot episode, The Cage, which had Captain Pike in it. They like reused some of that. So you would think, yeah, they would do something like that for this instead of just reshooting a bunch of it.
That feels like a huge waste of money. That would be interesting to watch these 2 versions back to back to see which one works better.
This is films under constant critique, not TV under constant critique. I guess this is a TV movie, though, so,
True, we're kind of riding the line on that one.
Although this film stands on its own as a futuristic sci-fi, well, while ripping off Blade Runner and other stuff, this is occasionally re-shown on TV. The music video series it was intended to introduce the following week has never been repeated since the mid-1980s.
I imagine there's some sort of like licensing issue.
This most obviously would be all the usual various music rights issues preventing, like you said.
Yeah.
Apart from this fictional original Max Headroom 20 Minutes into the Future and the Lorimar Telepictures reboot, none of the other Max Headroom series have been re-released or re-shown since the late 1980s. Also, apparently, one of the actors in this, Roger Sloman, played Vladimir Lenin in the movie
What?
Reds. Okay, I will give it this. I would rather watch this movie than Reds.
I don't even think I've heard of Reds.
Reds. It was a Warren Beatty movie about the Russian Revolution.
Huh.
It's not as interesting as it sounds. Mostly because of Warren
It's got
Beatty.
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson, he's good in it. He's barely in it. And also Jerzy Kaczynski, the writer, he's in that actually. That was one of his only acting roles. A couple of years after the movie Being There came out. Apparently Matt Frewer originally wanted to play hockey rather than go into acting.
Huh.
After an injury, this never happened.
I mean, this probably made him some money.
And he had also considered going into the biology field.
I'm looking at some of Matt Frewer's other movies. Apparently, he was in Night at the Museum 3.
Huh. Who's he play?
Archibald Stanley. I have not seen this movie
He was also
in a while.
In a really horrible adaptation of Hound of the Baskervilles.
Oh,
Where he
good.
played Sherlock Holmes. That's one of the worst Sherlock Holmes adaptations I've ever seen. He voiced one of Hades' henchmen in Hercules, if I remember right.
Really?
Huh. I don't remember what Fear and Panic. But yeah, I can't remember which one he played in Hercules. Because I know the other one was played by Bobcat Goldthwait.
He played Panic in Hercules.
Okay.
He was apparently in Batman the Animated Series.
Who did he play in that?
Some character called Sid the Squid. Not even I remember this character. I remember this character!
Sid the Squid. What did he look like?
Okay, I remember this character now. There was an episode where Batman faked his death, and everyone thought that this man killed him.
I don't remember that episode. Granted,
I barely
it's been a
remember
while
it.
since I've watched that show. And I don't know if I don't think I watched every episode of it either. Matt Frewer made appearances as Max Headroom on Sesame Street.
Huh. I don't know if I would trust Max Headroom on Sesame Street.
And in the music video Paranoia by The Art of Noise.
Huh. I think I've seen that.
And you
that
mentioned
video
the cameo
before.
in Pixels, and also the Eminem music video, Rap God. Eminem is dressed as Max Headroom.
Dressed as Max Headroom.
Yeah.
Oh, apparently Matt Frewer was also in the recent Castlevania animated series on Netflix.
Just going through his entire filmography, huh?
Yep, I gotta see what's there that's interesting.
And he was in Supergirl, which that's how we ended up talking about this, is because I mentioned.
That's right.
After the show was canceled, Max Headroom made an announcement, which was a parody of a famous speech by Winston Churchill. We will fight them on the streets of Dallas. We will fight them on the streets of Miami Vice. And if the ratings book lasts for 1,000 years, they will say this is Max Headroom's finest hour. Because Dallas and Miami Vice were both popular shows at the time.
Yeah.
Miami Vice also had a movie, although that was way after the show. The hijacking. We could talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah.
WGN Channel 9 in Chicago, Illinois was infamously hijacked by a man wearing a Max Headroom mask. The man managed to hack into the station on 2 occasions during that night. First during a local news bulletin during 30 seconds, and 2 hours later during 90 seconds during a rerun of the Doctor Who episode Horror of Fang Rock Part 1. And you can look up and see what he does during that. But I wonder what Matt Frewer's comments were on that incident.
Yeah, I think that would have been interesting to just see happen. Like you're just watching a show and then someone in a Max Headroom costume just shows up for like 30 seconds and then dips back out.
Yeah, and he's just like saying like stupid stuff too. He's not like trying to make like some statement
Yeah.
either. He was just making jokes and stuff, which you could barely tell what he's saying anyway. The only reason I even could tell what he was saying is like on YouTube you can find some versions where there's text at the bottom that shows what he's saying. Because he like references the Coke slogan "Catch the Wave," which Max Headroom was advertising Coke at the time. New Coke,
Yeah.
more prominently. New Coke, gosh. Imagine if we just did like a podcast like
On New Coke,
just on like tasting like weird like sodas that are out of date. Like New Coke would be one.
Films Under
Pepsi.
Constant Critique spinoff, drinking expired soda.
But it'll only be ones that like didn't last very long and like barely.
We're on the Pepsi 1893. But yeah, I don't know if there really is much more to say about Max Headroom.
Oh, the guy that hijacked the TV station, he was never caught. They never figured out who did it, which that's another thing. People like speculate like how like who would do something like that, like
yeah,
because I don't know how sophisticated like television stations were back then. Like how easy would it be to just hack into a station and just
I feel like it would be pretty difficult, wouldn't it? It's like it didn't happen very often. You never really saw.
Into like if you're going to go to all that trouble, like why would?
Apparently, back when this happened, if they would have caught him, I think it would have been like a fine of $100,000.
$100,000
for like FCC violations or something like that. So it's like that's a lot to put on the line just to dress up as Max Headroom for 30 seconds.
Well, 90 seconds. Well, it was like combined total like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a lot of money to pay for 2 minutes of intrusion. That's probably why they never caught him, was because it was just so brief.
Yeah.
Because that broadcast intrusion, that probably is more famous now than Max Headroom was.
Yeah.
Thanks to the internet. What'd be really funny is... And I find it so funny also that the hijack just has its own IMDb page.
Yeah, that is kind of funny.
It's like an IMDb page, and they don't even know who, like...
who's behind it.
Who's behind it, yeah. And we'll never know. We might never know.
Yeah, I don't think there's much else we can really say about Max Headroom at this point.
Yeah,
weird movie overall.
I guess if you
not
want to
horrible.
go off on some tangent about Spiral or Masters of the Universe again.
I don't know. Maybe those are deserving of their own episode.
I don't know if I'll ever watch Spiral, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not really worth it.
Because again, I'm not a huge fan of the Saw franchise.
Yeah. You know what would be great?
What?
If this entire time I wasn't recording.
Oh God, are you kidding me?
Don't worry, I am recording.
Okay. Oh my God, you scared me for a second.
That happened once, didn't it? Or like we had like an episode where it just crashed on me and we lost it.
That almost happened during, I think it was it Beyond Thunderdome?
I think it was,
and
yeah.
Superman 4, it also crashed.
Yeah.
both the worst films of those series. Coincidence?
All right, so I think for now that's all we have on
Yeah,
Max Headroom. 20 minutes into the future.
Yeah.
So
Go drink some new Coke. If it even,
all right.
I think they like brought it back briefly, but I don't know if you
Oh,
can
they did.
buy it.
I wish I would have picked some up when they brought it back.
Yeah, 'cause I wasn't sure if it was any good or not,
Hmm.
but that would have been really funny to do. Like, just do a podcast tasting new Coke, because they were like trying to make it taste sort of like Pepsi,
Yeah.
if I remember right. Yeah. Why would you do that?
Ruins the point of it being a Coke.
A Pepsi.
And keep it company.
Gosh.
Well, I think that's it for this episode.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for whatever we decide we're watching next.
Good night, you stupid idiot. Good night, you miserable slob.